Welcome, ladies. It is Camille here from Prioritize Love. I help single-driven women in how to attract a great life partner so they can have that relationship they truly deserve. And today I've got a very special guest on this video interview. His name is Brian Howie. He is the founder of the Great Love Debate. And how I came across him was actually through one of my clients, and she told me, "Oh my God, he's fabulous. You need to interview him." So welcome.
Hi, thanks for that introduction.
All the way from LA. So we just had a little bit of a chat before, and Brian was actually in Australia not long ago. So unfortunately, I missed your show. So I guess tell us a little, for the women who haven't heard of you, tell us a little bit more about what the Great Love Debate is all about and what inspired you to get into this field.
Well, I've been a writer, director, producer, like an entertainment guy for a long, long time, most of my career. And about 5 years ago, I wrote a book that was semi-serious look at dating and what I thought the women needed to do better at the time. I was working in Hollywood, and I thought a lot of the women were not really taking control of their own dating fates. So I wrote this book. It was very anecdotal, based on a lot of women that I knew and had worked with professionally. And my manager at the time said that rather than do a traditional book tour with 20 people in a bookstore, why don't you raise some of the questions that you raise in the book in sort of an open theater style, town hall style format. So we were supposed to do one of these, and that was 5 years and 384 shows and
Wow.
94 cities later. And what these shows are, we do them in theaters, music venues, comedy clubs, all over the place, where we get a couple hundred men and women together and have sort of a fun, feisty, hilarious, interactive look at love, sex, dating, relationships in that particular city. So every show is different, every crowd is different, every night is different, and we try to get to the crux of the disconnect in 2019 in Sydney or Chicago or New York or London or wherever we happen to be, and it goes in all sorts of directions.
Oh, I love that. And what was the book called?
How to Find Love in 60 Seconds.
Oh, I love it. Love the title.
Right, and
my program is how to find a great life partner in 6 years. So see, there's the difference.
What 60 seconds signifies?
6 months.
Yeah, what 60 seconds signifies to me is there are sort of 4 or 5 windows of opportunity every single day that somebody can recognize, act on, and not walk away from. And these are the choices. These are these little chances for a spark that I believe we have every single day, everywhere around us, that we block those out and we choose not to act on them. And those sparks can lead to something meaningful if you just get a chance to engage with the chances around you.
Love that. So let's go with the flow. I've had all these other questions, but tell us more about what is that opportunity? Like, what does that look like? So from a woman's perspective, how could they be more open to those, that initial connection, that spark?
Well, what I've learned over doing this is that the women want the men to try harder and the men want the women to make it easier. And neither party is willing to budge. And this sort of, blurring of the gender roles when it comes to dating and love has really confused everybody to the point of inaction. And so when we are out of our house and we are in a public setting and we're at the store and even on our way to work, we are basically programmed ourselves over the last half a decade to not engage and not be open to communication with each other until you're hiding behind, like I'm doing with you, this phone or a dating profile or some other social media. It's become very unusual for a man to just say hello to a woman or a woman to say hello to a man because everybody thinks the intent is not what they want it to be. So we have walled ourselves off to the possibilities, but the possibilities still exist every single day of your life. You're still within far more people. Women are still within far more proximity of more men who they could potentially fall in love with than they will be in a week of online dating every single day. And we sort of are uncomfortable recognizing the possibility that might happen in 2019, and we have to sort of get back to that.
Love that. So from the male's perspective, is it about women just holding eye contact a little bit longer, being more approachable, being more open to a bit of a chat in any sort of situation?
Yeah, it really is about the approachability. And, I'm not saying that women need to change everything they're doing or suddenly, just lie down in the street or something, or damsel in distress. They don't need to do that. They just have to recognize that it is a bit more challenging for the men to approach you or to say hello to you or to even hold the door for you than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it's sort of changed in the middle of everybody's lifetime, where behavior is different and chivalry is different and approachability is different. And so I'm not saying that the women necessarily have to make it easier. They just have to understand that it's gotten a little bit harder for the men. To use a basketball analogy, for years, the men were shooting at a 10-foot basket to get into your world. Because the women need us less, so to speak, it's a little bit harder bullseye to hit. So you're a little less receptive to the possibilities because you've narrowed it to, I only want this man in this circumstance and this kind of thing. And I think you're ruling out a lot of options if you just sort of widened your horizons a bit.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with that. You made an interesting point with men. You feel like women need men less now than maybe what they needed them, 30, 40 years ago. Is it really important for men to feel appreciated and feel like they are wanted and needed?
I think that men need to feel admired and respected. I think they need to feel appreciated. And most importantly, absolutely, I feel like they need to feel needed. And that doesn't mean that a woman is needy. It just means to see that there's a place in your life that he can somehow enhance it. And sort of the rise of the independent woman, and I grant it, all the women are independent and you probably don't need us that much. What that has done has taken already hesitant, already insecure, already not as confident as you need them to be men, and it's made them take another half step backwards. And I don't think that helps anybody. And even when the men take that step forward, I think the women are looking for red flags and the men are looking for green lights. And so that's a different fundamental approach in how optimistic everybody is that, a lot of women that I know, especially the women in their 30s and early 40s, they have been disappointed by men for a long, long time. And they're thinking, my dog and a good glass of wine and a good book is as good as the chance of going out with some stranger on a Friday night. I get that. That's probably true. It doesn't mean that the possibilities don't still exist. And it doesn't mean that they're not around you every single day of your life if you learn to be open to them.
Love that message. I'm curious, what do you love most about women?
That they're complicated, and I mean that in a good way, that each woman is sort of like her own puzzle. And I look at it like all women are snowflakes, like they all look a little alike, but when you examine them closely, they're delicate and they're pretty, and you need to figure them out, and you can't just assume that you know everything. So I'm a very curious person. I like to learn. I like to ask questions. I'm far more fascinated to do that with women than men because I think they're far more fascinating. I think they feel things on a more complicated level in a good way. A lot of men, mistake complicated for crazy or just because they don't understand it. I think that's wrong, and I think that's a mistake that men make. I think that you need to take the time to get to know her, take the time to get to know how she can fit in your life and how you fit into her life. And I think that if you do that, that is more pleasurable than anything that you could find anywhere else.
Oh, what a beautiful summary. I'm sure the women will enjoy hearing your take on that.
You are better, women. You're better than us. You are.
What do you find most frustrating about women?
That they think that because we knew a woman, we understand women. Meaning, I hear a lot of times, I shouldn't have to train a guy. I shouldn't have to explain to him what I want. All he knows is what the last woman wanted, and he probably found that out too late. So he is willing to do almost anything that you would like him to do in your life to please you, to make you feel special and sexy and safe and all the things you want. He just doesn't have a roadmap. And sometimes the women either are not willing to provide that roadmap or haven't spent enough time thinking about what that roadmap looks like. I ask women all the time, what do you think you need to be happy? And the list of what makes them unhappy is a lot more ready to go. It's a lot more accessible because they've spent a lot more time thinking about it. And if you're not exactly sure what makes you happy or what you need or what you desire, it's going to be a real challenge for him to figure that out. So I think that is it too, that it's focusing on the positive relationship, not that the only choices are, I'd rather be alone than be in a bad relationship. Well, you would rather be in a good relationship. And you have to look at that as an equal possibility of the three possibilities. You have to believe that it is possible. You have to believe it's out there, and it will happen for you.
Yeah, I love that. It's something I hear a lot from, especially when I start working with clients. It's like they just don't believe that it's possible anymore. But we would both agree that part of the problem is that they are actually, blocking themselves from having it with how they currently turn up in the world or their belief systems, etc. So there is always a way.
They've lost the confidence that it's possible. And it is possible. And a big part of the way it can be possible is to figure out a way to get that confidence back and to believe in it. Because if you gave every man and every woman and you said, listen, if I told you that you could get into a happy, loving, honest, sharing, growing, intimate relationship with just one other person, would you take that? And almost everybody everywhere around the world says, I would. Not everybody believes it exists, or they don't trust that it's possible, and that's why they don't believe in it. But it's not that they don't want it. I think all men want it. I think all women want it.
Yeah, that was actually, that was another thing I was going to ask you in regards to the men's perspective. So when women, need to be more open to being approached. So how does a woman know that a guy is looking for a long-term relationship and not just for a little bit of fun? What are some of the, I
think he also wants a little bit of fun. Meaning It's not that he doesn't want that. It's not all that he wants to like you. A lot of times he wants, as you said, a little bit of fun, because he thinks if he has that little bit of fun, that is his way of interpreting that you like him back, that you desire him back, that you find him interesting. Men, a lot of women say, oh, I laughed and I touched his arm. He could tell. He can't tell. It takes if a woman said to a man, listen, I don't really want to go there until I feel comfortable, but when I get comfortable with you, it's going to be amazing. He will calm down. It's out there, it's on the table, and she finds him interesting and finds him desirable. A lot of times the reason why he just continues to try things or that all he seems is because he is not picking up on the signals that you do like him and you are interested in him, because women do not compliment men that much. Women do not tell us that much. And you think that we know, or we assume the worst all the time. We assume you don't like us. And so I think women need to communicate how they're feeling, what they're thinking, and what they like in a positively reinforcing fashion, because you will certainly let us know when you don't like something.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
And I always say, we're not dogs, but we do need a pat on the nose as often as we get a smack on the nose. And I think we want to know we're at least in the right neighborhood of what you like, and I think women need to do that more.
That's a great message, and I love that line. It's going to be amazing once I'm ready, or something.
Once I'm ready, it'll be better than anything. So let's get to the place where I'm ready. He'll sign up for that. That sounds great to him.
Absolutely. So he'll know that it will happen once she's
possible. Yeah. And then he'll focus on getting her to a comfortable emotional place, and he will calm down. And that's all anybody wants is, to get a chance to know each other. And I think men do want to do that. I think the reason why men, chase a bunch of women around is because they're insecure in themselves. And a lot of times they're insecure in one relationship. And, both parties need to do better to make each other feel appreciated and loved and respected and all those things that sometimes we just assume they know.
Absolute gold. Thank you so much for sharing your, the man's perspective on this. So what is your current relationship status? Are you currently single or in a relationship?
I'm in a relationship.
Nice. The reason why I'm asking too is I'm sure a lot of my listeners be like, wow, he is such an aware, human being.
Well, I wasn't always. And, I always said that my job was to ask the questions, not to give the answers. But because that we have heard from over 90,000 people around the world, once you start to hear people's stories and opinions and experiences, you do start become more aware, and you do start to understand what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong as a man or a woman. And that sinks in, and it takes the right special woman to realize that you're not perfect and you can be vulnerable with her and you are willing to improve. And we're all sort of works in progress. I am not a person that believes that it takes two complete people to get together. I think that you've got to get yourself do the work to get yourself about 80% of the way down the road, and then find the right person, partner, circumstance, relationship that can make you both grow together. So, I think I've grown a lot.
That's a really key message, actually, because I think the danger is with personal development sometimes that then people feel like, oh, no, I'm not quite, I'm not totally loving myself enough, or I still need to, I don't know, make more money or lose some more weight or be more the perfect match. But it's not about perfection.
I'm really surprised. One of the things I've learned, two things I've learned from doing this. I learned how many men are either frightened or angry that could go way back to some experience when they were 15 years old and they never quite processed that. But the other thing, on the positive side, I was so unaware how many women would be open to men who admitted that they were in therapy, or that they were trying to do better, or they were reading books or taking classes. Men were taught for so long to try and present the absolute best version of themselves. But I think women believe that the best version of yourself is the version that you can become and that you're working on, so she doesn't have to do all the work. I think women really like the guy who owns his greatest flaw and owns his greatest vulnerability and is willing to sort of admit he's a work in progress. I was surprised at how many women prefer that.
Absolutely. That's really important for the men to hear, actually. It's I agree, it's very attractive if a man's currently, doing any kind of personal development and is really honest about where he's at and what he wants, what he wants to step into. So how can the listeners find out more about your shows and what you do? What's the best way for them to follow you?
Well, if you go to greatlovedebate.com, you can not only check out our live tour schedule. We're going to cities all over the world, and we will be back to Sydney and Melbourne in January because we loved it so much. We'll be coming back. And also a link to our podcast is there. We do have the world's #1 dating and relationship podcast. We have a lot of fun guests. We have a lot of celebrities on there, and we answer just about every question you could think of on that podcast.
Perfect. I'll be sharing those links below the interview as well. So next time, in January, you will definitely be you'll do a show in Melbourne as well. Is that right?
Yes, we will.
Perfect.
Melbourne's the most interesting city in the world.
In what way?
Meaning every 20 feet, it feels different. There's the most interesting gathering of cultures and architecture and interests and people and food and everything that I have ever been around in my life. I was absolutely fascinated by Melbourne, and I can't wait to go back there. I love Sydney too. Sydney was amazing and beautiful.
It's a beautiful city.
And
Yeah.
we had a huge crowd there, but there were things in my brain that were stimulated in Melbourne that have never been stimulated like that in my life.
I will definitely be really keen to have you here, and yeah, I'd love to see your show as well. So I'll make sure I'll keep that date free.
Send you all the info.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom. It's been really valuable, and I feel like there were some key bits in that are absolutely crucial for women to hear. So thank you so much again for making the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Talk soon. Stay warm.
Will do.